Control!
Over the course of my very little time of being a YouTuber here on YouTube.com, I have been known for one of three things. The Sonic Colors hater, which is very fair, I did color a federal crime. The Shadow 05 glazer, which is also very true, because that game is, well, P-gaming. And the third one, which is the one I want to focus on today. The Sonic Generations hater. And I can definitely understand why people would think that, considering I made this video right here. Sonic Generations is extremely overrated. So when I first heard that Sonic Generations getting a remaster, I was quite skeptical. Generations of all games? Why not Unleashed or the adventure games? They needed a remaster much more desperately than Generations ever did. But when that first trailer hit us in January at the PlayStation State of Play, well, let past me take it away.
It's happening! It's happening! He's here! Oh my god! Oh my god! It actually happened!
And with every trailer and every tiny promotion, I was more and more flabbergasted at how good this game was. The level design looked amazing, the music seemed fantastic, the story seemed that it could be even better than some games like Sonic Unleashed or SA2. I could finally record my own footage for whenever I talked about Generations. Everything was coming together, and when it finally came to head only today as of the writing of the script, oh, what can I even say? Sonic X Shadow Generations is my favorite Sonic game. I'm so tired of this honeymoon phase and this hype bias. No, this game is actually the best Sonic game in my eyes. I'm so sorry. This is the only 3D Sonic game that has no catch at all. With games such as Unleashed and the adventure game, there's always been that one gameplay style that just isn't good, and Frontiers had so many issues that they had to make whole free updates to fix it. Now, am I saying these games are bad? No, in fact, I adore these games, and for the longest time, they were some of my favorite Sonic games. But Shadow Generations one-ups almost all of them to an unbelievable degree. I 100% finished the game already, and am replaying all the levels and challenges all the time, because, oh my lord, this game is on a whole different level. I don't really know how to tell you this, but Sonic X Shadow Generations is a masterpiece of a video game and is the new pinnacle of Sonic the Hedgehog. Why? Well, let's find out. Now, this is actually going to be a dual review. I never really made a true review of Sonic Generations. That overrated video was more of, well, why was the game overrated in my opinion, and not really about the game itself. So today, we're going to do exactly that. Sonic Generations is a video game I like. In fact, I really like this game. It's in my top 10 best Sonic games of all time, but that doesn't mean there aren't any issues within this game, because, well, there definitely are, and a lot of them are more often than not very overlooked by people, but we'll leave that for a little later. It's easiest to start off with the controls and gameplay. Now, we have to look at both classic Sonic and modern Sonic when it comes to this, and all I can say without the shadow of a doubt, the controls are alright. I mean, they aren't bad, but Sonic feels just so slippery to control in 3D. The drift does remedy the issue a little bit, but comparing what we're gonna see in Shadow Generations, it's a little ridiculous how much worse Sonic controls. Again, it's not bad, but more often than not, it does work with the level design of Generations. Do I find myself slipping off a lot of the time? Oh, absolutely, but it isn't awful. I think Sonic Colors actually had much better controls. I know it's kinda crazy that I'm saying something positive about that mid-fest, but the controls and colors are actually good. Apart from that double jump, cause wow, that is an abysmal thing. Anyway, the other real criticism I have for modern Sonic's controls is the light speed dash and the wall jump have become pretty much completely situational. Like, you only use the light speed dash and speed highway a lot, and then that's about it. You just sort of don't use it anymore, except for some challenge missions. Which I think is quite unfortunate, because that could have been used quite well in the level design for a lot of cooler skips. But otherwise, modern Sonic, he's pretty good. I love the trick system, and the drift is pretty baller too, though I probably like the one in Unleashed more. Overall, he definitely isn't my favorite controlling modern Sonic. I think Unleashed and Colors control better than Generations, but it's not bad at all. Now, classic Sonic, well, I have quite a bit to say about this little bastard. Now, control-wise, I don't really like him in the sense that I wish his gameplay was more momentum-based. Classic Sonic has always been all about those loops and half-pipes that help you gain speed. Even in the newest classic Sonic game, Sonic Superstars, that same momentum is kept in very well. And I really wish they did the same thing here, because what we have here is not what I wanted. But putting that aside, is classic Sonic fun? Well, yeah, I'd say he is. But at the same time, there are so many levels that just aren't the best. The spin dash does make up for it though, because honestly, yeah, it's stupid fun. Now, does it take all the fun away of classic Sonic and building up the speed? Oh, 100% it does, which is my biggest problem. But the way it is in Sonic Generations is actually pretty good, all things considered. But I never did like classic Sonic. I think the idea of a 2D only side-scrolling Sonic is dumb, and his design is awful in this game, and in every game after. I mean, look how stupid he looks. I hate his stupid little... Oh. Well, I take everything back, because don't you look beautiful. But generally speaking, yeah, I do like classic Sonic. He definitely isn't the best version of this character, and I think the classic controls have done his controls much better. But what are controls without level design? Sonic Generations is a total of 9 levels, each having 2 acts, so 18 levels total. And pretty much all of them are really good. The only level I don't like as much as the others is Planet Wisp as a whole. Classic Sonic's version is the worst level in the game by far. Modern Sonic is almost complete 2D, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad level, because, well, it's not that bad, but what it does do is show us a pretty massive problem that this game has. What problem, you may be asking? Well, of course, the 2D. Now, 2D is not inherently bad in Sonic games. In fact, 2D can be amazing in 3D, which we will get to talk about later once we get to Shadow Generations. But here it's just not done the best a lot of the time. My biggest problem is that we have a Sonic who's completely 2D. So why in God's name does modern Sonic still have sections in his supposed 3D gameplay where it's not that at all? If I want to play a 3D level, I should be able to do just that without the game randomly switching into 2D. This is another thing that Shadow Gen's so much better, but yet again, we'll get to that later. But the levels and their environments are wonderful. All the chosen levels I think are great. The game is what started the whole nostalgia pandering, but I don't think I can really blame it for that. Now, do I still wince every now and again when I boot up Chemical Plant or Green Hell? Absolutely, but I can't really say it's Jen's fault of every single Sonic game that came afterwards. But the biggest problem these levels have in the sense of their level design is their skips. Good boost levels should have really intuitive skips that benefit the player in getting an S rank, but here's we face our problem. Not only are the skips really weak, but also the ranking system in this game is absolutely atrocious. The skips don't feel rewarding at all, and skip only barely any time. Apart from some in Seaside Hail and Cityscape, these skips are much worse than the ones we see in Sonic Unleashed. That ranking system seen in Generations only brings more issues to it. It might be the easiest in Sonic history, I cannot lie. On your first playthrough of the game, you can get most, if not all, S ranks, which kinda sucks. Even the red rings aren't very too difficult to find, as I am almost always able to find at the minimum 3 per level each time I play, which only warrants one more playthrough to collect the rest. Now, again, this is not to say these levels are completely ruined because of it. No, that's just not the case. But my enjoyment of them are significantly diminished due to this fact. Couple that with the level design just not being as good as Sonic Unleashed, and we get something that is really good, but is not at its true full potential. If I had to say which was my favorite level, it would be Rooftop Run. The stage is as goated as it is in Sonic Unleashed, and the remix is just amazing. Speaking of, this soundtrack is so freaking goated, it's insane. The remixes are so good, and I listen to them all the time. Cityscape Act 1 and Rooftop Run Act 1 for classic Sonic have to be absolute standouts of the soundtrack. And as far as modern Sonic goes, his remix of Rooftop Run and Crisis City are probably my favorite tracks from his arsenal. All in all, the level design in Sonic Generations is really good, backed by some fantastic remixes, and it makes from probably my third favorite out of any boost game, behind Unleashed, and well, we'll get to number 1 in a little bit, won't we? Now, of course, the levels isn't all that Sonic Generations has to offer. We also have this little hub world, and while it isn't anything special, it's nice, with the music changing every time you're near a certain stage. The stages itself have such neat little references and details that are just so cool. Like for example, the roads and Speed Highway all being based on Sonic characters. I think a certain someone should take notes, because this is exactly the cool type of references we should get. Anyway, in this hub world, you also have different extra challenges you must do in order to unlock boss keys that will, well, unlock boss fights. And these challenges, well, they kinda suck. They aren't as bad as the missions in Sonic and the Secret Rings or Sonic Unleashed, but these are boring, repetitive, and not very interesting. Now, can there be interesting ones? Oh, absolutely. There's this one on Planet Wisp Pack 2 where it utilizes the rocket wisp in a very cool way, where you have to plan out when and where you have to rocket yourself up. But these challenges are like a needle in a haystack, and more often than not, they're really boring. Once you do 3 challenges, you can grab 3 keys and make your way to one of our 3 boss fights. And technically there are 6 boss fights since there's 3 called rival fights. Starting off with Metal Sonic, since he's your first boss you face up against. And he's fine. I think for an on-rails boss fight, it's pretty cool, but like with most of the game, it is ridiculously easy. But apart from that, the boss fight is quite enjoyable, and the Stardust Speedway remix is excellent. I do wish Metal Sonic's design wasn't so cutesy, or at least give him a smaller head, like his ass is not the thinker. The Death Egg Robot is the boss fight for the classic Sonic era, and it's quite easy. You simply have to avoid its attacks at first and just sorta hit him in the ass. Its second phase is a lot more interesting though, with you having to arm these bombs while Eggman tries to lock onto you. If you successfully avoid the attack, and Eggman does hit the bomb, he gets stunned, allowing you to jump on his arm and do damage. Do this 2 times and he's dead. Like I said, easy, but pretty fun all things considered. The rival fight in the adventure era of levels is Shadow the Hedgehog, and believe me, well, we'll get to you in a little bit. Now, this boss fight is pretty fun. You essentially have to raise Shadow above the Space Colony Arc and try and get the purple sphere that powers you up into a super boost, or a meteor boost, or whatever it's called. Once you have that, you knock meteors into Shadow, which will slow him down just enough for you to catch up and deliver the final blow. This boss fight is just alright, actually. It's not the best, it's way too easy, and Shadow feels way out of character. It's kind of ridiculous. Now, the main boss fight for this era is Perfect Chaos, and I'm only realizing this now, but we never did an explanation as to how he's here. Did the Time Eater just pull him here? Was it the Eggman? Like, he just pops out of nowhere only for him to be absolutely annihilated by Sonic. In base form, no less. Like, this is actually insane. Perfect Chaos should be ashamed. The fight itself is a platforming fight, which actually works super well. Running on water and broken parts of the city is very cool in my humblest, and I really enjoy it. The second phase is where it gets really cool, because the final platforming section is the most difficult part of the boss. Not that it is difficult, but hey, at least they tried. I do wish this boss lasted a little longer, because overall, this fight is one of the better ones in the game. The rival fight for the modern era is Silver the Hedgehog, and this is the best of the rival fights. It's yet again on rails, so you can't stop, but shoot, I'd be lying if I didn't have fun. Silver's attacks are very cool, and the final meteor smash move he does while throwing massive containers and debris is awesome. The final fight before the final boss is the Egg Dragoon, and while I cannot lie, I still prefer the Unleashed one. This one is still super cool. Unfortunately, this is also where Sonic's really mediocre controls like to poke through, because oftentimes I literally cannot make it onto the ramps to attack. But apart from that, it's pretty repetitive. You either get onto these ramps to attack him, or do this wall jump bit where you can damage him. It gets really interesting when you enter the skydiving part, and if you haven't done damage to the boss, he splits the Egg Dragoon in 2, which is a super cool spin on this boss fight. The biggest problem with this boss comes with the fact that you literally cannot see this happen because you've already dealt so much damage at times. But apart from that, it's definitely my favorite boss fight in Sonic Generations. Before we talk about the final boss, you may have noticed that I didn't talk about the story of this game, because wow, it is so bad. Big purple thing comes, grabs Sonic's run, time fix. That's about it. Yeah, I have no other words to describe this story. It barely exists at all, and I have to be honest, it is so bad. And I am so tired of hearing the excuse that it's an anniversary game so it gets a pass. Okay, it's an anniversary game, sure, but that doesn't mean anything. Anniversary games can have amazing stories, and this excuse shouldn't be used to dismiss a very important part of the game. Again, I have to stress this does not ruin Sonic Generations for me, not at all, but it is still a negative that I will penalize the game for. But now that's out of the way, it's time for our final boss, and wow, this is really like the second worst final boss in mainline Sonic history, huh? I really have no words to say. The Time Eater is an abysmal boss, to say the absolute least. Not only is this the easiest boss in Sonic history, it requires almost no work in the slightest. You just sort of boost into the boss and that's about it. I have absolutely nothing to say about this boss at all. It is just awful. And the only boss that's worse is the final boss of Sonic Heroes, because that game is just abysmal. And its build-up is really bad, as the cutscene before it is just really, really bad. And the game ends just like that, with a pretty eye cutscene and classic Sonic pissing off to his dimension at the end. Sonic Generations is a good game. It's undeniable, but it does have quite a lot of issues that a lot of people overlook. Do I still think Generations is an overrated game? Yes. Yes, absolutely I do. People be gassing this game up way too much than what it should be. I quite like the game, but again, it is definitely not the best. Now that we've gotten through that, let's talk about Sonic Generations again, but specifically the version of Generations seen in the remaster. This is your spoiler warning, as everything after this is either new stuff added to Sonic Gens or just straight up Shadow Gens content. That is the most times I've ever said Generations in one sentence, Jesus. Now, the game looks pretty much the same. It looks slightly better, I guess, but apart from it running better and also being in 4K, there's almost no change to the game. The game also functions entirely the same with only one major change, and that is the new control scheme and the addition of the drop dash. Now, as far as the controls go, I actually prefer these new ones. Putting the boost on R2 is the single greatest decision Sonic's team has ever made, and it shows. Now, it still doesn't fix the actual issues with the controls of Sonic, but it does feel a lot better to play overall. The drop dash is something I'm pretty mixed about. On the one hand, I will never use it for modern Sonic, ever. It's pretty much useless. But as far as classic Sonic goes, oh wow, this is like hella fun. I actually enjoy classic Sonic a lot more now. Even levels like Planet Wisp are no longer as much of a pain to go through, and it's a really welcome addition. And while not as powerful as the spin dash, it's significantly better than I thought. Another thing they added were these chows that you can find in the game, and while they don't really do anything than just chill in the hub world, it's really nice. It gives so much more life to this otherwise very, well, dead hub world. Also, the variety of the chows seen in the game is just beautiful to see.
And the final thing that this rewrite added was, of course, something that everyone's been bitching about, and that is the rewrite. And if I gotta be honest, I do not give a singular fuck.
While there's a lot of cutscenes that are significantly better than in the final game, a lot of it is just as bad, if not worse, than the original game. I personally never cared for the story of Sonic Generation, so it really doesn't ruin the experience of it. Well, apart from this cutscene, which is actually so stupid.
Thanks, Sonic. Now then, tell me, where is the rest of my island?
I hated it, Knuckles. But honestly, apart from that, that's about it for Sonic Generations, both the original game and its remaster with heavy quotations in Sonic X Shadow Generations. Do I still like this game? Yes I do. I like this game a lot. But I do still think people be glazing this game way too much. 100%. The game is good, really good, but nowhere near the best Sonic game. Alright, it's time to talk about the part you've all been waiting for. Or maybe you skipped to this part, so maybe you haven't been waiting at all. Shadow Generations. I'm ripping the band-aid off immediately. This is my favorite Sonic game. Now, this isn't set in stone, and I could be having a honeymoon phase. But to be honest, first of all, not only did I have a honeymoon phase with only one Sonic game, that being Sonic Heroes, but also, holy shit, this game is so freaking good. Oh man, where do I even begin with this? The controls are some of the best Sonic has ever had. I almost never screw up a jump or make a mistake by slipping off the edge. It's just that damn good. And whenever I do die, I know exactly why I died. And you know what the controls go hand in hand with? This freaking masterpiece of level design. Every single level in this game just slaps, whether it's 3D or 2D. Sonic Colors, take notes, because this is how 2D is done right in 3D Sonic games. But Shadow Gens takes it a step higher and creates one of the greatest decisions in Sonic history. They fully split the 2D and 3D levels. Act 1 will always be completely 3D, and Act 2 will always be completely 2D, which is such an amazing decision. No longer do we have to argue about what's the perfect ratio to 2D or 3D. They're just completely separate. Starting off with that 3D. This is, without a doubt, not just the best 3D in Sonic history, but also the best level design in Sonic history. The amount of pathways, the amount of skips, the amount of amazing in-game cinematics. Oh my god, this game! After I beat the game, I played the Space Colony arc again for the first time since starting this game, and I was like, oh wow, this is the worst level of the game. This level is also better than almost any level in Sonic Generations. Oh, and the 2D, it's the best in 3D Sonic history. No other 3D Sonic game had 2D level design this amazing. And while granted, Shadow does feel very slow in it, it is not enough to take away from his banger level design. And in complete honesty, it is a worthwhile trade-off for such fun and such branching level design. Even ranking these levels from worst to best is too difficult because all of them are so good. The Ark level is such an amazing starting level. The cinematics are on point, the music is awesome, and even in the first level, there are so many open paths, it's crazy. For my first couple of playthroughs, I honestly kept on finding so many paths, it's ridiculous. The Radical Highway part is also amazing, and again, these animatics, oh man. The level looks beautiful, and the remix is an absolute banger. Hearing the entire thing after listening to only 2 minutes of it for like 2 or 3 months is a little surreal, but it is awesome. Act 2 of the Ark is also really cool, with a lot of multiple paths and really awesome usage of Chaos Control and Chaos Spear being brought over from the previous level. And this is also where you get your first Doom power, but we will get to those in a little bit. The remix in the second act isn't as good as the first one, but it's pretty solid too. The Space Colony Ark is a great intro to the game, and shoot, it slaps. Rail Canyon, man. They made something from Sonic Heroes good. Like, what are we doing here? The level is so much fun with some amazing uses of Chaos Control as you make sure these enemies don't blow up the rails and allow you to access faster paths. The use of rails in this level lived up to all of my expectations, having so many intuitive and really fun paths. The trains are also amazing gimmicks, and again, the Chaos Control comes in awesome use. The transition into the Doom Zone is also the best in the game, and the level design is immaculate. It's also crazy for how long the level continues after the fact that you literally leave the Doom Zone. Act 1 remix is the remix of Rail Canyon, but Act 2's remix is a remix of Bullet Station, which is such a neat little reference as to how the act structures worked in Sonic Heroes. Speaking of Act 2 though, we have yet again great use of Chaos Control on the level, as well as something else that's really interesting. We have our first use of foreground and background gimmicks, and honestly, it feels like all Act 2 levels have them, because going back to them, I found one in Sunset Heights too, but we'll get to Sunset Heights in just a little bit. Oh my god, man, Kingdom Valley. This was probably my most anticipated level of the game, and it delivered on a level I couldn't imagine before, and it's probably my favorite level in the game. The level design is so immaculate with so many different paths that I've yet to discover all of them. The use of Doom Surf is amazing, and at Act 2, not only is the remix for Act 2 freaking amazing, the level design is the best out of any 2D level in a 3D Sonic game ever. It's just so much fun, and going inside the castle is such an awesome idea. It's just such a good level. The comeback for Sunset Heights is unbelievable. We went from such an awful level in Sonic Forces to literally one of the greatest in Sonic history. The cinematics, the branching level design, the use of the Death Egg robots, suddenly switching from the burning city to the sewers, everything about this screams Sonic Forces, but if it was polished and good. The Radical Highway part is also my favorite of the 3 encounters. The level design just feels especially on point. I mean, they even brought back the chain homing attack in Act 2. And speaking of, I know I said Kingdom Valley is my favorite 2D level, but this one is a really close second. I am so beyond happy about the comeback of this level, because it deserved such a massive glow up that I got here. Though I wish it was Metropolitan Highway that was brought back. I love that stage in Sonic Forces, and it's one of the only times where I really enjoyed that game. And this is also my favorite stage remix by far. Both Act 1 and Act 2 slap. Chaos Island at first seemed like a really weird pick. When I first saw it in a trailer, I was more flabbergasted than anything else. Chaos Island? Shadow hasn't even been there yet. That makes no sense. But honestly, yet again, my expectations were kind of blown away. Again, this is where I have my issue of ranking all of the levels, because I can argue with you right now, this is one of the best levels in the game, if not the best. Doom Morph is such a fun gimmick. It is a little bit to get to, but at the end of Chaos Island, you're flying through the level like no tomorrow. And on repeat playthrough, this level shines like absolute diamonds. Act 2 is a little weaker, not bad in any way, but it's not as good as some of the other ones. Chaos Island is such a great time, and I'm so happy they brought it back because the graphics of this game are some of the best in the series, and let this level shine. This is, in my opinion, by far the most beautiful Sonic game I have ever seen, that shines especially in levels like Radical Highway, Chaos Island, and the Ark. The environments have gotten a new life just breathed into them, especially with the older levels. But what's a freaking amazing video game without those bosses? And I kid you not when I say this, these bosses might yet again be my favorite in the series. We first have the Bylizard, and while it is my least favorite boss in the game, it is not bad in any way. It starts off the same way it did in Sonic Adventure 2, before it says screw it and grows freaking extra appendages forming out of its eggs. It's so cool, man, and the attacks afterwards are completely unique to Shadow Generations. It is a little repetitive, but the way you kill it is so cool. Chaos controlling to stop tab, shooting this massive energy ball back at it before a final badass QTE. This fight was so awesome. The next boss fight was Metal Overlord, and this is such a good fight. The use of Doom Surf in this fight is unmatched, and the amount of cool cinematics that follow it, as well as some actually badass lines from Metal Overlord, is amazing. The biggest miss of this boss fight has to be the What I Made Of remix, as it's honestly barely any different. It is the best Crush 40 song though, so I can't take any points off of it. Oh, but the next boss though. Oh man, I've been waiting for this since I became a Sonic fan, man.
I will defeat you, then restore myself to the timeline.
I truly have run out of adjectives to describe how much I love this boss fight. My GOAT, the greatest villain of all time, Mephiles the Dark. Not only is this boss fight one of the sickest, most badass, most amazing boss fights in Sonic history, but they handle Mephiles so perfectly, it's ridiculous. The voice acting is on point, the lines he and Shadow drop between each other are perfect, and the usage of Doom Morph is near perfection. Mephiles in this game is near pinnacle of boss fights in Sonic history, and I just love him with all of my heart. The way Shadow drops into Dusty Desert and sees the Scepter of Darkness and not recognizing it at all is just so perfect. And then the scepter explodes, revealing Mephiles' power. The ground turns purple and Mephiles' minions attack. And Shadow, you know, of course, he destroys them all. And then right next to him, slowly, he pops out and immediately tries to kill him. Mephiles is not kidding around this time. He just immediately used the move that will instant kill Shadow if he was caught in it, and that is unbelievable. I just love how he is so desperate here, how he's trying to get so desperately back into the timeline. It's just so awesome. And to add even more to that is the whole reason why I like his voice actor in this game. Mephiles in the original game had a dark, very deep, but a very calm voice, and this is mostly due to the fact that he was in control of the situation at all times. But here, his voice is so much more higher pitched, it's so much more desperate, and that's the whole point of Mephiles in this game. He's desperate, he's trying his absolute hardest to get himself back in the timeline. I mean, the whole reason he yells, "I want to exist" at one point, is because he's so desperate to get back into the timeline. It's his one chance, and unfortunately, well, for him anyway, Shadow defeats him. It's the first time I ever felt real pity for a villain in Sonic history, especially a villain to the magnitude of Mephiles, who will and absolutely would want to destroy space and time. Everything about this boss fight though, from the use of Doom Blast and Doom Morph, to the reappearance of his enemies, to him cloning himself, to him even bringing out his giant form, it's just amazing. And the remix that backs it up is so near goddamn perfect. And there is a whole reason why I'm going so much more in depth about this boss fight than Metal Overlord or the Biolizard, because unlike these two, Mephiles hits on a whole other level. I had originally planned to go over each boss in each stage in Sonic X Shadow Generations, and specifically in Shadow Generations, in detail, creating a separate episode for each of them, and going into a lot more detail into them there, rather than having all the detail in this one video. But Mephiles, man, he's gonna need a whole 30-minute video, because this boss fight is on a whole different level. This is, without a doubt, my favorite boss fight in Sonic history. I replay it all the time, and oh my god, it's better than the Titan fights. I'm sorry. I am in love with this boss fight, and I just pray and hope that by some coincidence, as the time meter is being destroyed and everything is being put back into normal, the time scepter slips through the cracks of time and somehow ends up in our timeline. That is all I can hope for as a massive fan of Mephiles, because I need to see him again. But even if I don't, this is one of the best send-offs to one of the best Sonic characters of all time. But now we come to our first criticism of Shadow Generations, the ranking system. While not as easy as Sonic Generations, it is still quite a bit too easy. Except with Metal Overlord and the final level of the game, which will be talked about in a little bit, and the challenge missions. The biggest difference between this game and Sonic Gens is that with Shadow Gens, I want to replay those levels simply because that level design is that fun. In Sonic Generations, there are a lot of levels I just do not end up replaying, and a strong ranking system would have been more useful to my enjoyment in Sonic Gens than it is in Shadow Gens. Now, I'm not dismissing this issue in Shadow Generations, but what I am saying is less of an issue here, because A, it being slightly better anyway, and B, due to all the levels being endlessly more replayable than it is in Sonic Generations in my opinion. But our linear levels are not the only thing we have in this game, because this game just cannot stop delivering. We have a whole open zone. While I wouldn't say it's the best open zone out of every single one we've had, it's still super solid. I'd actually play this over Frontiers' Chaos and Rhea Islands any day. There's a lot of stuff to do here and items to collect. In every level there are these keys to collect, which will open chests in the open zone and give you music, art, and summaries of Sonic games. There are also these balloon thingies flying around the open zone and give you entries into Gerald's notebook. All of this can be viewed in the collection room, which has so much stuff packed into it and so many neat little references. Heck, they even have the music from the Shadow animation prologues playing in the background, as well as his motorcycle, which you can even get on. My favorite thing about the open zone has to be though when you bring back the levels. They create these tiny little open zones, especially with Kingdom Valley and Chaos Island, and I love that so much. It gives us a glimpse as to how open zones without the bland environments we saw in Frontiers could look like. But what is Shadow Generations without the Doom powers? Introduced to Shadow gaining more and more power from Black Doom, these gimmicks are so much fun. All 5 of them are applied near perfectly well in levels, especially Doom Morph and Doom Surf. The utilization of them and combining them with Chaos Control creates some amazing opportunities. And the best part about it, all the levels apart from the arc, since you only get Doom Wings in Act 2, have amazing usage of almost all the abilities. It's such a loss that we'll never get to play these again. Their application can be used even in the open zone, and is super fun, especially with Doom Wing, as you can literally fly over anything and get to anywhere you want. And as you're getting through this game, you're accompanied with some banger music. While not all the remixes are great, I think overall this has a great soundtrack. Sunset Heights and Kingdom Valley in particular are amazing. Oh man, and the story, it's a top 5 in the franchise. I've got nothing else to say. While I don't think it's the best due to it being a little rushed because of the game, well, being short, it's such an emotional roller coaster, and that last cutscene, I cannot lie, I teared up a little bit. I've never felt so much for a story in the franchise's history. I just really wish the game was longer so some story bits didn't feel rushed or a little reused. I will not go into detail of the story since you should experience it yourself, as it is just fantastic. But of course, we have our last and perhaps our most important thing to talk about, the final zone and the final boss. After Black Doom achieves full power and transforms the white space into the Doom space, Shadow must get to the top and enter the Dark Moon before he plays 2 acts of the screwed up Radical Highway, and I have to say, these 2 levels are amazing. This is some Eggman Land energy on these levels, and while not as difficult, they are just super fun. Both acts are also 3D, which is really good and benefits this final zone a lot. The amount of multiple pathways feel ramped up as you almost never know what Black Doom will throw at you next.
And due to the ridiculous amount of said open paths, it makes Radical Highway my favorite level in Sonic history. Before this, I've always said that my top 3 levels have always been Lava Shelter at number 3, which I promise will get its own video because I seriously need to explain why I think that, Final Rush for number 2, and Eggman Land for number 1. This level feels like Eggman Land except no Werehog, so automatically it gets bonus points for that. But moreover, even though it's technically not as difficult to beat, since the level isn't anywhere near as long as Eggman Land, it's still beautiful to see that this level takes all of the great aspects of the original Eggman Land and just makes it better. But my favorite thing about this level is the way you play it, or rather, the way you replay it. See, when you first play Radical Highway on your first playthrough, you play with the Doom Wings, and when you do, it feels like a fantastic and awesome experience. But when you play this level, both Act 1 and Act 2 without the Doom Wings, it feels like you're playing a completely different level. The experience is completely different. There are so many more paths that I've never even seen before, just opening up, with the Doom Wings and without the Doom Wings, giving you 2 brand new, completely different experience that I've never seen any Sonic level ever do with its core gimmick. You can argue that the Werehog did that, but the Werehog was mandatory. Here, the Doom Wings, or Shadow without the Doom Wings, isn't. And that's what makes this level so freaking perfect in my opinion. Again, Radical Highway will get its own video later down the line, as I still plan to do a video for every level in this game, but all you got to know is this is definitely, in my opinion, the best Sonic level of all time, and goddamn, it is one of the best levels I've ever played in video game history.
Getting through both acts, you get to the final boss of the game, which is none other than my goat, one of the best supersonic final bosses of all time, Devil Doom. And this boss fight is just amazing. Combining all the previous Doom powers and with some amazing cinematics all around, it's just such a fun boss fight. The music is blasting a remix of the original boss fight music in the Shadow 05, and as the guy who loves that game to bits, it was so cool to see. And we're not done yet, because Devil Doom has a new form called Neo Devil Doom, and he is so awesome. This design is amazing, and flying with Super Shadow, avoiding all the attacks, and maintaining your ring count is so much fun, as the best version of All Hail Shadow blasts in the background. And when you finally do end him off, it's one of the coolest cinematics I've ever seen. I've got no words to even just describe it, and the game ends with such a sad scene, man. Like I said, it made me tear up a little bit. Before my final wrap-up thoughts, I want to mention one thing really quickly, and that is speedrunning. Yup, this game already has speedrunning techs, and these are amazing. When chaos spearing mid-air after a boost, you maintain your horizontal speed, and this is just amazing. I've already gotten sub 4 minutes runs on the arc, and getting really close to breaking that 2 minutes on Chaos Island. Editor's note, after writing the script, I've actually gotten a sub 2 minutes, so very proud of that. Anyway, back to the video. Every level has such amazing paths, and they're just so much fun to speedrun through. And chaining your chaos controls and optimizing path is just genuinely so much fun. In the end, Sonic X Shadow Generations is genuinely the best Sonic game I have ever got to experience of all time. I'm so excited for the future of Sonic, and heck, this game already sold 1 million units on launch day. The future of Sonic has never been brighter, and if they take all of the fantastic level design, gimmicks, and everything that was made Shadow Generations such a fun video game, we could truly see a Sonic game that could rival some of the juggernauts of the gaming industry once again. And hell, this game came so close to doing that. Shadow Generations is undeniably one of my favorite video games ever. Not just Sonic games, no, video games. I adore my time with this game, and something tells me I will not be putting this game down anytime soon. I love everything about this game, I love everything it's going for, and man, I just hope that we see Shadow again, just as badass and awesome as this game. So thank you all for watching this pretty massive duel review. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao!